Scientists are releasing a new warning about the threat of a massive supervolcano eruption, like the one under Yellowstone National Park.
It could destroy the United States as we know it.
Let's say you live in the Yellowstone Park area and tomorrow this monster is going to wake up. What do you think would happen? A complete eradication. There will be an enormous amount of hazardous fumes in your environment. All lives in the area will be seriously affected. After all, we're discussing the after effects of a supervolcano eruption. Although I said to imagine this scenario, this catastrophe can happen at any time. And in today's video, we'll discuss what would happen if Yellowstone erupts. Hello and welcome to our channel. Before we start, subscribe to the channel to get more videos like this. And don't forget to press the bell icon. Having said that, let's begin. The western region of the US is home to a sleeping behemoth. It periodically shakes itself, but it hasn't awoken from its sleep in many years. But when it wakes up, it may howl and heave with a power that has never been seen before. This enormous structure is known as a supervolcano, and it's located beneath Yellowstone National Park, a large wildlife and forest preserve that spans the states of Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. While the majority of Yellowstone is contained in Wyoming, the volcano itself is situated there. The consequences of a Yellowstone eruption would be catastrophic, but how horrible exactly would they be? Let's have a look. Previously, 3 supervolcanic eruptions in the area have happened. One happened 2.1 million years ago, the second one 1.3 million years ago, and the most recent 640,000 years ago. And this stat generally contributes to the notion that another event is imminent. Some believe that we are rapidly nearing or even already well inside prime time for another eruption based on the gaps between those 3 dates. But perhaps it's not a good idea to base all of your worries on the average difference between the 3 numbers. But what provoked the volcano to erupt? The key factor is the tectonic plates. There are substantial chunks of the Earth's crust that have the ability to move forward, away, or alongside one another, which can result in a volcanic eruption. Fissures are weak spots or tiny tears in the Earth's crust that are brought on by shifting tectonic plates. The magma below the surface gets a chance to escape when fissures appear. One of the most popular national parks in the world is directly beneath a 5-mile-deep plume of liquid magma that is fed by a massive plume of molten rock that rises from the center of the globe. Because this much lava is swirling beneath Yellowstone, the entire national park frequently rises and falls by a few inches at a time. And in the event of another significant eruption from the supervolcano beneath Yellowstone National Park, it could cause damage to structures, suffocate crops, and shut down power facilities as it spread ash thousands of miles across the United States. It would be a terrible calamity. The prospect of disastrous super eruptions is what draws so much attention to Yellowstone. A super eruption is defined as any eruption with a volcano explosivity index magnitude of 8 or above and an ejection volume of at least 1,000 cubic kilometers or 240 cubic miles. That would bury Texas 5 feet beneath the surface. Even the largest eruptions we are accustomed to are thousands of times less powerful than these super eruptions. The experts discovered, among other things, that the volcano was capable of engulfing the Midwest in 3 feet of hazardous volcanic ash and burying states like Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and Colorado. That much ash might destroy vegetation and wildlife, collapse roofs, and damage various electrical devices. 5 miles of the underground plume, months of swarms of earthquakes were caused by the magma being forced upwards, and they all rumbled and rattled the rock just above it, fracturing it and creating the conditions for an eruption. And now let's see what actually is going to happen if you witness the eruption. When you reach the park exit, an enormous earthquake occurs that is unlike anything you have ever experienced. To your dismay, the ground trembles all around you as rivulets of magma begin to spew out in several different locations throughout the park. The road you're on splits and cracks, leaving impassable crevices and holes. Since cars are now completely useless, you decide to do what seems reasonable to get out and start running. You're not exactly sure where to flee to. The earth will shake once again as you pump your feet, and then suddenly the Yellowstone caldera erupts outwards, unable to withstand the tremendous pressures gathering below. The narrative is over here for you. If the explosion actually hits you, your entire body down to your bones will be spewed into the sky as part of the massive ash cloud. Your body is burned by magma at temperatures up to 2,400 degrees Celsius, but not before the extremely hot and poisonous fumes that surround you fry your lungs to charcoal. Instantaneous death results from the extreme heat boiling your brain in milliseconds and causing your skull to rupture outward as a result of the steam buildup. you're officially one of the fortunate ones to face a volcanic eruption, so congrats. But you'll not be here to receive the appreciation. Millions of tons of lava is ejected in a 40-mile radius during volcanic explosions. Volcanic ash, which is composed of broken glass and powdered rock, rises into the atmosphere and is blown by the winds across the landscape in the form of an almost perfect umbrella. Only roughly a third of the massive 240 cubic miles of ejecta that the Yellowstone Volcano spews out over the following weeks enters the atmosphere. However, that would be more than enough to cover the entire northern Rockies in an astounding 3 feet of ash. As a result of breathing in the ash, thousands of residents of these states start dying. Due to the extremely sharp and jagged glass particles, they not only suffocate and fill the lungs, but also wound and lacerate the lungs and trachea. The 40-mile eruption zone's venting of extremely toxic gases also spreads stifling and toxic gas over hundreds of miles of terrain, finding its way into the underground shelters of the few survivors who survived the original blast. Gases like hydrogen sulfide and others slowly suffocate victims while killing tens of thousands of them. Industry and transportation are also halted by the 3 feet of ash. The extremely thin ash wreaks havoc on vehicles and damages electronics, making roads inaccessible. Sulfur aerosols, which have been released into the atmosphere in massive quantities by the Yellowstone eruption, have started to bounce sunlight back into space. Within a few weeks, the entire world is covered in sulfuric particles, and the amount of sunlight reflecting into space causes a degree decrease in global temperatures. At first, the global hardly detects the temperature dip, owing to human activities' carbon emissions helping to moderate trends in global warming. However, the temperature decreases considerably more over the ensuing weeks. However, that doesn't mean that everyone should start freaking out. Fortunately, the likelihood of such occurring is quite low. As we said earlier, there have only ever been 3 truly massive eruptions from the Yellowstone supervolcano, which is thousands of times more powerful than a typical volcano. And despite what you might occasionally read in the media, there are currently no signs that we're about to experience another super eruption. In fact, probably Yellowstone won't ever have another explosion that size. It is feasible for major cities to be devastated by hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and volcanoes, even with the early warning systems we now have in place. However, one catastrophe has been persistently predicted in the media for decades, with current assertions that the event is overdue. The northern Rockies may theoretically be covered in 3 feet of ash by a super eruption, which would obliterate major portions of Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Montana, and Utah. A few inches of ash would fall in the Midwest at the same time, and much less would fall in the coasts. The precise distribution would be based on the season and the weather. There are currently no indications of an impending eruption. Although there are still earthquakes in Yellowstone Park and the ground is still rising and falling, this is nothing unusual. The USGS notes that Yellowstone is acting in the same way it has for the previous 140 years. The likelihood that Yellowstone will remain eruption-free for millennia to come is very high. The odds of Yellowstone exploding in any given year are 0.00014% according to the USGS, which is lower than the likelihood of being struck by a civilization-destroying asteroid. Even so, it's not a reliable estimate because there's no guarantee that Yellowstone explodes on a predictable cycle or that another eruption is imminent. If enough time passes, the hotspot will leave Yellowstone's foundation, and the supervolcano there will presumably cease to exist. A fact, a second supervolcano could form much farther to the northeast, but that wouldn't happen until the hotspot warmed up and melted the crust, and it can take 1,000,000 years or longer for that to happen. So, what do you think? Is another super eruption imminent? Tell us in the comments section below. And that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more such exciting content. See you in the next video.